G'day guys, Leigh here and Tristan Brown from Amber Workshop Property. This is one of our first videos of many. Tristan and I have been talking about this for a while, and what we want to do is every Friday afternoon sit down, have a catch up, maybe a cup of coffee, discuss the week and some things that just came apparent to us that maybe is lacking in the marketplace. And what we've realised is that there's a lot of information that's just lacking out there. So whether you're buying or selling or you're just a property owner, what we want to do is offer some value and some advice just that might help you at some stage in your real estate journey. And so that's the plan going forward, Tristan.
Absolutely,
What do you think of that?
I like it.
So I'm the good looks, he's the expert, and together hopefully we can bring out some good information.
Make some sense out of it. Yeah.
So what's happened this week, Tristan? We're talking about subject to sale. Something that I've seen more than ever recently, offers coming in with subject to sale. Now, based on the Gold Coast, I didn't see too much of this, but at the moment it's phenomenal.
Look, it is common, but we're definitely seeing a lot more at the moment, Lee.
Yeah.
And that just, I guess, reflects buyer activity at the moment, the low interest rates, everybody's getting out and wanting to possibly secure something now while the time's good. But what we noticed lately is that there's a lot of noise, and for buyers and sellers, it is hard for them to sometimes understand what is, I guess, a little bit of BS and what they do really need to appreciate is important in negotiating the sale.
Yeah.
So subject to sale, there's a lot of different factors that come into play. We can talk about it
What
also.
is subject to sale, first of all, I suppose?
Yes, good
just
question.
to clarify for potential buyers out there at the moment.
Subject to sale is when you're not yet in the process of having sold your property, but you wanted to secure a property. So you've been out there looking.
You've still got a property to sell.
Correct.
But you really like a place.
So you just need a little bit more time, but you don't want to miss out on the property that you're looking at. So you make an offer, you submit it to the vendor, but you require that time to then go and sell your property. Subject to sale could mean that you're yet to go through the process of putting it on the market and selecting an agent, or it could mean that you're as far progressed as having it on the market and even having it under contract.
Yeah,
But you're still,
subject to the sale of your property
Correct.
before you can move and purchase the next property.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotcha. So, and we were talking, Lee, there's a lot of subtleties there, because we've seen a few people recently with our transactions where they've had a subject to sale on the property, and then another offer has come along in the meantime under a sunset clause. And that initial purchaser unfortunately has missed out on the sale. So there are some
just to clarify, a sunset clause.
Yes.
So that's when we put a contract towards the seller.
Yes.
It's subject to the sale of the buyer's home.
Correct.
The sunset clause protects our seller.
Correct, because we are engaged to look after our client, which is the vendor, the seller.
Okay.
And as an agency, our policy is to never accept a subject to sale without a sunset clause. So that's not something that buyers should be nervous about. It is very standard, and it's there to protect the vendor so that they're not locked into a contract for a lengthy period of time should a greater offer come along in the meantime.
And I suppose it's more so if the buyer's property doesn't sell for whatever reason.
Correct.
The seller, the owner of the property, they're not locking themselves in there, and they're protecting themselves, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not going to get into too much.
So don't be put off if you come across and the agent says we're putting in a sunset clause. That is very standard, and I think any good agent would not go to a contract without a sunset clause in that situation.
And I think it's a good reason why, if you're a buyer, particularly in this situation where you've still got to sell your home, but you'd like to make an offer on this property, that you speak with your agent, get guidance there, but really put forward your best foot too. Because if you make an offer that's a little bit cheeky or something like that, and it's got a sunset clause, there's every likelihood that someone else might come through and make an offer that's actually better than yours. So if you show the owner from the start that you're genuine, you really like their property, and you simply just have to sell your home, that's going to put yourself in a better position, isn't it?
Yeah, you want to do two things. You want to incentivize the seller to want to hang on to you as the purchaser and not necessarily actively look for somebody else. And you want to make it as difficult as possible for a potential secondary buyer to, and I don't like the term gazump, but it's probably a term a lot of people are familiar with, to make it as difficult for that second buyer to come in and I guess come over the top of your offer. And there's generally two ways to do that, because your terms as a subject to sale is perhaps not as strong, but you can be strong on your purchase price and you can be stronger in your deposit. And that way it'll give the seller confidence, and it makes it harder for that secondary purchaser to come in with better conditions. but perhaps not as strong in the purchase price or the deposit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what else can we do as a buyer? You've got a subject to sale, you've got the sunset clause in there. What else can they do to put themselves in a good position to move forward with the purchase of the property?
So there's two things that we always refer, Lee. One is when you're appointing an agent, whether it's another agency or an agent that you've got an existing relationship with, or should it be, ourselves or the selling agent of the property that you wish to purchase, communication is key. We can't stress that enough. So many times we've seen a deal fall over where simply the seller of the property is not getting clear, concise information on where their purchaser is in regards to the sale of their home. And a lot of the times I think the seller would have hung on a little longer and given them more of an opportunity, except either the buyer or the buyer's agent wasn't relaying that clear, transparent information, and the seller lost a little bit of confidence. So they ended up going in a different direction. So that's absolutely integral. We would naturally always say that if you're buying a property off an agent, you are better off trying to use that agent if you feel comfortable with them. Correct.
Yeah. So unless you've got a pre-existing relationship with another agent, the person that you're buying the property off, as long as you have the trust in them, sell your property through them, because that way the agent's going to be on top of both the sale of the client's property and the sale of your property. So there's going to be obviously open communication there.
It's not a ploy. I know that sometimes people think as an agent we love to not only sell that property and then we get another property to sell.
It's good for us,
it is good for us, but it's not our motive. Our motive is to ensure that the seller of our property, our client, has access to that clear communication through the one agent.
So ideally, if you can do that, use the same agent to sell that you're buying through as well. Great, but if you don't, you've got a relationship with someone else, then use them, but just be very clear with that agent that they can communicate with the selling agent as well. And keep your lines of communication with
be upfront, even if the interest is perhaps not there. The worst thing you can do is start trying to fabricate, because people start to pick up on that very quickly. Just be upfront, and if you need more time, you're better off just giving the initial sellers some notice. And most of the time, people are understanding, and they'll work with you.
Communication is key in anything, whether it's subject to sale, but buying or selling real estate. If you just keep those lines of communication open with the agent, you'll do a lot better off.
Yes. So I think ultimately, subject to sale is not a bad thing in the marketplace. It does work. But there are some factors there and some tips that if a buyer uses and follows that process, they'll have a much better chance of end up getting to a suitable outcome, which is all we want. That's all we want for people. So
I think that's a wrap.
That's it for week one. See you next week? Next Friday?
Come back next Friday, do it again. Let's see Tristan Brown and Worsham Property. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.